right. What's going on, my soccer parents? Is Bali over here with Soccer Parent Live checking in, and we have our first anonymous guest here. We're just going to refer to this guest as Coach because this person's a coach. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's welcome Coach Cal.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going, Coach? Thank you for coming on here. So you are the first one that's going to come in, and I think you are perfect to come in and really talk to us about your side because I think you have a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom and opinions. So I'm going to ask you a question, and then we could just kind of branch off of that and figure out, just kind of conversate. So the first one that I wanted to ask you is, what do you think parents often do wrong, and also at the same time, what do you think parents often do right?
I think the biggest thing that parents do wrong is pushing their kids because they think that they know better. They will, like, maybe if the kid has burnout or something, they think, well, just have them push through it to try to overcome it and they'll find their love for the game. Or getting in the car and giving your child corrections on, hey, you need to work on this, this, and this. Um, I think those are huge problems because a lot of times the kids are tough on themselves. They're already getting feedback from coaches, and what they want to hear is, I enjoyed watching you play, or pointing out the good stuff. I think just, we feel like as parents that if we give them these other pointers, that's going to set them apart, or that's the little tweak that they need in their game to to achieve their goals. When really it's going to happen if they want it bad enough and if they work at it. And let the coaches do their job. Don't need to be a coach. Be a parent. Just show them love and support. Um, I think, one thing that parents do a good job at is trying to provide their kids with those resources. Whether it's private lessons, camps, guest playing opportunities, whatever that may be. It seems like parents are doing a better job these days of just providing that kind of support. Where I think a lot of the kids nowadays need more of that mental support of just saying, I'm proud of you, you did great.
Got it. Damn, the shoe fit over here. I was like, ouch. You know, it's funny because you're saying that, and I'm like, that is so true because that's where I went wrong early on. And you're right with what you're saying that what we try to do is we try to help, but that's not helpful. They are beating themselves up. And had a conversation with my daughter in one of the other videos I made, my oldest one, and she kind of expressed it hurt, even though she's 24 now, to hear her now talk about how she felt going into the car, it hurt me to know that that's how I made her feel.
Mhm.
So I'm with you 100% on that. As far as the providing the opportunities, I think you're also right. We try really hard, but we're also, I think, trying too hard, and we're kind of overstepping our role. We're not saying in our lane, right? We're not letting you coaches do your thing. So I'm with you on that. That's a good answer. Now the next one, as far as being in the coaching world, people obviously don't know who you are, but I know you have extensive experience at different levels. What kinds of things have you heard from coaches that just make you shake your head?
I get really frustrated when coaches joystick coach their athletes. It's player, the wing back needs to pass it to the holding mid needs to play it to, the nine or whatever their passing patterns and whatnot might be. But I get really frustrated when they try to control the game too much and that they don't just allow the players to be creative. And that's where the kids are going to thrive. Let them problem solve. Let them figure out the game as because otherwise, what are you going to do after they've moved past you? And let's say they're U15, U16, U17, and they don't know how to do the game on their own. They don't understand the creativity with the movements, with their runs, with different ways to play the ball, angles, and if they've just been joystick coached. So that's something that's always been very frustrating to me. I think that too often we try to control the game instead of letting it happen organically. I also get really frustrated when coaches kind of pigeonhole players where they put them in just that one spot and don't give them an opportunity to play other positions. I think that's so key to development. You look at some of the best players that, come out of high school or college, they were playing, maybe they were a great striker, but then they go professional and all of a sudden they're an outside back. So
Yep.
it's one of those things, and people say, well, why would you switch them into those roles? Well, because you don't want your defenders to be losing the ball. You want them to be people who are very comfortable on the ball and can distribute and play. And so that's why a lot of times people convert the strikers to outside back. But if they've had that experience leading up to that, it makes them much more versatile. If, let's say, your team is down a player, they're missing somebody for a tournament, or let's say you're going to play in high school or college, you can say, hey, I'm very comfortable playing either of these positions, not just, oh, I'm a center back, and that's it. So you really limit yourself and your understanding of the game, I think, if you get put into that one role, especially early on.
Yeah, that's I agree with you on that one. Now, you talked about creativity and how some coaches will impede that. When you've coached at higher levels and you've looked at youth players to bring them on to where you were at, um, did you ever see like a pattern of like certain coaches you knew that they were developing creative players and you knew that some coaches were just holding their players back? Did you ever see that pattern with some coaches?
A lot. I saw it a lot. I still see it a lot. I see a lot of players um, that when they play for me, they say, I I'm finding my passion for the game again because I can relax and I can just play and not feel like I've got this one job, I've got this one role. And I think it really hinders because you can always find a player that can go from point A to B to C, but do you have those players that can read a situation and maybe see that, okay, it's really congested on the left hand side, this is a great opportunity for an overlapping run so I can unbalance the defense, different things like that. So yeah, absolutely, I think coaches typically will stifle players. I mean, not all coaches are bad, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of the narrative of just, I'm supposed to be in this position at this time. Um, one area I'm not a big fan of is when they get a little crazy with the dribbling, the too many step overs at once, or things like that.
Yeah.
Keeping it simple, I think, is very key. But it's the movement off the ball and things like that, that creativity is really important. Because think about it, there's 11 people on the field and there's one ball. So how many people don't have a ball? So one of the best things you can do is make yourself useful off the ball. It's not so much what you do on the ball.
Got it. What do you think, if you were to have an opinion, what do you think is causing coaches to be like that?
I think there's a lot of pressure to get wins. And so there's a lot of times you'll see a more direct style of play, just bypassing lines, and uh, and so I think getting the numbers forward and that kind of, instead of being patient, swinging the ball, and really moving it throughout your players, and really seeing those key opportunities to go forward. And there is something to be said for playing direct. I'm a fan of it, but I'm also, you've got to have variety in your style. But I definitely think that there's a big pressure on coaches to win. I think there's a lot of coaches who are set in their ways as well, and that's why I think having different coaches throughout your playing career is also very key. So not having the same trainer all the way through, because everybody brings something to the table. But just like that, everybody has their weaknesses. So what can you gain from somebody else that you might have not have gotten with another coach?
Got it. Yeah, that okay. That's actually interesting. I never thought about that. I always thought it was a good thing that to have like a continuity with coaching, but I never
Mhm.
thought about the fact that having multiple coaches can expose you to like different strengths. Now, as far as like you mentioned that there was a pressure to win. Um, I know it sounds like a silly question, but I'm just kind of curious what your answer is. Why do they have so much pressure to win?
Well, look at how much parents are paying every month for their kids to play. So if they're not producing results, then the parents are looking at you like, well, it's not my kid that's making mistakes, it's you. It's the coach. You're the one who's being paid to produce these results. And they're not, most of the time, they're not thinking about the actual development of the players, especially if they're on the A team for that club. It seems like with the second team or the B team that there's a little bit more leeway on the development and not the pressure as much to get the results. And actually, a lot of times those kids are the ones that actually end up thriving because they don't have that pressure and they focus a little bit more on that development as opposed to the results.
Mhm.
So but I definitely think, results are a big thing. And then if they're not getting it, the club will look at them like, what are you doing? Why are you not getting these results? And when our competitors down the street are winning these tournaments or winning these games, we need to be better than A, B, and C over there. So,
So it's
I mean,
marketing then.
absolutely, absolutely. And results don't drive, you know, necessarily development.
Damn, that's crazy that you say that. Like I know that. Like that was my theory that that's what it was. But it's interesting to hear it from someone with experience like yourself, just because I think us parents are the root of the problem, and we don't realize why, because of what we demand. We demand wins. We demand like tangible results, that we can see and brag about, and we're causing the same thing or the problem, the outcome that we end up complaining about. Because if we were not so focused on winning, then coaches wouldn't be so pressured to win. Clubs wouldn't be marketing winning, because that's what we want. It's just like I always look at clubs like they're businesses, so they have to tailor to their consumer. So it's what we ask that they want to provide. So if we were like, we don't care about winning, dude. Like we don't care about winning. We just want development. What is my kid looking like? What are they? Are they creative? Are they, are they going to be succeeding at the next level? I'm worried about the next level, not now. The clubs would adjust to that demand. So I think we're at fault as as parents, because it's what we're demanding. We're demanding wins. We're getting wins. We're getting no development, and we're at fault for it. That's what I think.
Absolutely. And, unfortunately, because parents, they want to be on that winning team and they think, oh, well, if my kid's on that winning team, then they're going to be seen by college scouts. Then, so that causes coach or parents to club hop and just kind of keep feeding. So that's another thing. If we win, we're going to draw the best talent. And there's truth to that a lot of times, which is unfortunate, but it's the reality of the situation. And I can't stand those rankings and everything, the club rankings and this team ranking and whatnot. It's like, oh my gosh, it's just another marketing thing. You don't really know what these, you know, like who cares if they're, number five in the United States? I mean, are they true number five anyways? How do you really know that? So,
Yeah, that's funny. Some parents live and die. I think it can be
oh, they do.
fun. I think it could be fun, but I also think we take it too far as parents. It's almost like we really believe that we're number five in the country. Like, no, it's just a fun way to kind of put, I don't know, I don't know what the word would be, but to kind of like put it into a ranking to where you can look at it and compare and like just be proud of it. But we take it too far. Like we actually believe that this is legitimate, and it's not. It's just an educated guess at best.
Exactly. And I mean, okay, what you put it on your soccer resume and everything like that. At the end of the day, these college coaches, if that's your goal, they're not looking, okay, yeah, you play on a highly ranked team, but at the end of the day, it's what can you do? And if you're just crazy fast and and you can score because you're crazy fast, well, you know what? You get to college, there's a lot of crazy fast players. So it's how technical are you? How do you read the game and all that stuff? So it's just it's very frustrating for me to sit back and watch and listen to these people just brag about it when it's really not a big deal at all.
I got a question for you
Yeah,
about college coaches. Um, do you think there's a substantial difference in the quality of the coach from a youth soccer level coach to a college level coach? And before you answer, let me tell you why I asked this question. Oftentimes, as parents, we look at what position you hold and we assume that you would, before you can coach at the college level, then you have to kind of graduate from the youth level. So it's almost like an assumption we make, kind of like with, the sport is like before you can be on the A team, you got to work your way up. We kind of view it that way. Do you think that the quality of college coaches is what most parents think it is?
That's a really good question. I would say yes and no. Um, some they become college coaches, whether they finish their playing career and then they step in as like a student assistant or just an assistant coach at the college and work their way up to be like a head assistant or associate head coach. Um, some having never coached youth. There are some that a lot of them have gone through the youth system and done very well. A lot of them have pursued their coaching licenses, but just because you've gotten a coaching license doesn't necessarily make you a better coach. You might understand the tactics of it a little bit better. So I'd say the college coaches, we definitely see um, a better understanding tactically for sure than at the youth level. But there's a lot more that goes into being a great college coach. It's who are you recruiting? You got to recruit the whole person. You're not just recruiting a great outside back. You're recruiting somebody who's good in the classroom, who is going to be an asset to your team. Are they a leader? Are they a follower? Are they one that stays after and picks up the cones and helps the coach? How are they when they lose the ball or their teammate loses the ball? Are they yelling at them? So this is stuff that college coaches have to evaluate. It just goes beyond the X's and O's. Are they going to be somebody that the players can go to and talk to about their classes or something going on in their personal life? But if we're talking strictly X's and O's, then typically, yeah, they're much more tactically. But there's so many other things that make a great college coach, I believe, than just that.
Got it. Yeah, I didn't think about that. I should know that because I talked to some coaches that are assistants in different colleges, and I should know that.
No,
Yeah, no, it was just funny because it's not just me. I talk to a lot of parents, and it's what we assume. I think I think that we don't, a lot of us, and when I speak, I always talk about, if we were to talk, kind of like I always look at it like a bell curve, right? I think the majority of parents are not former players. I think most of us come from not knowing anything about soccer. I think that's the larger population. And then you have like a smaller set of that population that are like generational players where they used to play, their parents played, and I think that because it's so big that you see that a lot of us that are not familiar with the game, like the other group, don't understand what you were just describing. That is, it is more tactical at the higher levels versus in the youth. I think youth is, it should be more like you're focusing more on the kind of facilitating the player growing confidence in their game. That's really where we should be kind of focusing on, and then introducing like the tactical side a little bit more into like their mid to late teens, like more like intensive. I don't
yeah,
know, maybe that's the right time frame, but I think that, I saw a post earlier today where I forgot the gentleman's name. I'll have to see if I can tag him or something, but he was talking about coaches doing too much at like single ages, like single digit ages, like 9, with having the whiteboard talking about tactics at age 9. And I never thought about that. I actually, as a parent, I probably would have thought that was a good thing, that they're talking tactics at that age. And I'm sure you have to have some sort of game plan. But, throwing too much does kind of lead to that joysticking you were talking about, where it's too tactical at a young age to where they can't think for themselves and figure out, problem solve on the field. I think that that's what you were talking about. It just like kind of the light bulb came on right now. That's what you're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about.
That's exactly it. I think we think, oh, okay, this coach has all this other equipment out, or they have the tactical board out, and things like that. At the end of the day, at the 9 years old or under, a lot of times you just want them to stay in bounds and go forward. It's like just try to pass to your teammate.
Mhm.
But trying to do any kind of tactics like that at such an early age, I think, is just over the top. And what you said about building confidence really resonates with me because the dropout rate, especially on the girl side, it's like 75% after when they get into their teens, and it's so disheartening. Um, and I think a lot of that is it's not fun anymore, whether that's because of parents or it's maybe they had a coach that ruined it for them, or maybe they don't see a career in it. And that's really disappointing too because there's so many, the game is growing and there's getting to be more opportunities out there for girls and women in the sport. But I think too often confidence is a big factor in why so many of them are quitting or not performing.
Yeah, I think so because I can think back at a lot of players that I remember from a youth game, and knowing that they didn't move on to like the JC level or the college level, and a lot of it was confidence because I know the ability was there, and you see a different version of them when you see them practicing. If you, I know maybe I was one of those parents that was too much because I was at every practice, but I loved going to practices because you would see the actual player there, because you would see them try things that they wouldn't do in the games, and you knew some player that could, for example, do step overs. Like, dude, she can do step overs. Like, I've never seen her do a step over in a game. Like obviously,
Mhm.
there's a time and a place for it. Like you don't want to just be doing it everywhere. But the fact that you just never saw them try, like that kind of says a lot to me. And um, it's not particular to a coach. I think it's just the whole environment is it doesn't it's not conducive to mistakes anymore. That you can't, like, it's almost like it's so high pressure at such a young age, and I think that's what causes the problems where it becomes a job for them, and they're like, dude, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this to myself? I'm miserable.
Yeah, exactly. And you're gonna make mistakes. I tell my players it's a game of mistakes. And it's what do you do from that? How do you adjust? And that's why the joysticking doesn't work because mistakes are gonna happen. So when you teach your players to be creative and encourage it, and you just kind of laugh, oh, you made a mistake, but how do you recover? What's next? That's one thing I had a player that would say that too, just you gotta get rid of that thought or worrying about that and think what's next. So it's you go after it. You try to make up for the mistakes because they're gonna happen. And it's not a big deal. Everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, so let's see what other questions we have here. um Let me see. Do you think paying to play for the established clubs with the patches is worth it?
Oh, the patches. I think it really depends on what your end game is. A lot of parents, and I made this mistake as well, getting, my kids in at a really young age. I'd say 8, 9, even younger, because you think, okay, this is where they need to develop and everything like that. But what I found is a lot of times the burnout just hits earlier and it becomes too much. Even if there's somebody that loves the sport and they can't get enough, my recommendation is, until they're about, 12 or so, and they really are showing that, hey, I want to play high school, I want to play college, I want to play professional, I would keep them at, a more, I would say, not as intense club, and then look to make your way over when it gets a little bit closer to probably about 12 or 13. But people always think, oh, I missed the boat or anything. No, a lot of times those kids come in and they're on fire because they've enjoyed their playing at a young age. They haven't hit that burnout phase. So they're more ready to work and put in the 3 days a week. But if your goal is to play at a high level, then I would say, yeah, you want to get them on some of those clubs where they have a history of putting players, in front of college coaches, getting them signed. Always look at their signing night. Hey, how many players were signed? If you have a son on the boys' side or if you have a girl on the girls' side, a lot of these clubs, they're either really good on the girls' side or really good on the boys' side for college recruitment. So I think definitely seeing the patterns. And sometimes that happens where they just have a couple good relationships with a couple of the local colleges. So you'll see like the same name colleges over and over and over each year pulling from that club. But if you're looking for the bigger schools, then you might need to branch out a little bit because some of those are just a little bit more redundant, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You mentioned something about relationships and recruiting. It's one thing I noticed is just how important relationships are, not even for us as parents, actually, just like coaches and trainers. Because it seems like when a coach trusts the judgment of a specific, club or uh, trainer or coach, it's almost like they put a lot of weight in their opinion. So it's almost like their referral is even better than a highlight tape. Um,
Absolutely.
so how would you what tip would you give someone to find out who's got what relationship?
Well, that's a good reason not to be on your coach's bad side because they will tell them, the good, the bad, and ugly. Um, and that's something we freely, um, as coaches, we talk very freely with the club coaches. We talk to the kids' teammates also. Hey, how is this person? Are they a good teammate? Are they selfish? So I would say it's hard when you're a parent to establish a relationship with a college coach. Um, the best way, initially would be through emails and never do it from the parent. Like I always hated getting emails when it was like, you know, my name is Susie and I want to play for you at this college. And then I look and it's Barbara's email. I'm like, okay, I'm not recruiting the mom, I'm recruiting the daughter. So make sure you don't make that mistake because you want players that are going to take the initiative. But that's the best way to establish a relationship. If you have a trainer or anybody that has those relationship with the college coaches, then that always helps. But I would say establish the relationship first via email, and then once that relationship is established, then I would look to go into like the college ID camps. But do like if I want to go to North Carolina's the Tar Heels, their college, and I've been talking with their coach. Go specifically to that school's ID camp. Don't go to Penn State's because you see North Carolina's going to be there. A lot of times they just pay a former player or they'll pay, like an assistant coach. And the coaches a lot of times are just there because they're getting paid really well. And then they see it as a fun night to meet up with their other friends who also coach college and go out for drinking and whatnot like that. So personally, I'm not a big fan of those ID camps unless it's at the campus you want to go to.
I'm with you on that one. I actually, it's funny without knowing the background of what you're saying, because you're speaking from, knowing that role. I actually tell parents that I always looked at ID camps like campus visits. So we go, you get to see the campus and we pay for a little bit of training. And then that way, whether you like the campus or not. Cause I always kind of look at it like, like what happened with my daughter that she ended up, she stopped playing, but she still loves the school. That could happen to you. So it's important that you like the school in case you don't want to play anymore or something happens and, you fall out of favor or whatever the end result may be. It's really important that you actually like the school. And that's why I always tell them that. So it's funny you say that, but I had a feeling that that's what it was with coaches.
Oh, it's so bad out there. I mean, they pay them very well, and I'm glad that this is anonymous on my end because I'd probably get a lot of heat from these other coaches because they love it. It's a paid trip, and they're getting paid for their time, and they're hanging out with their friends, and but a lot of times, players aren't picked up from that because there's not a lot of head coaches out there. It's the assistants or former players. So, but I mean, that's not the rule of thumb for every college. So that's my disclaimer. But there is always a exception to the rule. But for the most part, I'm not a big fan of those unless it's on the college campus. Um, so yeah.
You're like, how do I not say too much?
Oh my
It's okay, coach. I'm not gonna tell who you are, man. It's you that
God.
I always tell people I've turned money down. If you can believe that people have actually offered me money to try to find out who said what. Like, no.
Yeah, if you get any messages about college coaches,
Who
saying I
is
wonder
it?
who the cow was, then
That's so funny. I actually, speaking of like coaches, it made me think of other states. We're not going to disclose where you're located, but obviously we have people all over the country in our account. So I talk to people sometimes from other states and I get questions from like the Midwest, and then they ask about Southern California particularly. Um, I don't know if you view Southern California that way, but I always hear that it's a very crazy place when it comes to youth soccer. What's your experience or what your opinion is of youth soccer in Southern California specifically?
Oh, it's absolutely nuts down there. I'd say it's because the population is so high. Some of the best, club programs are down there. It's crazy competitive, so that everybody's just like looking for that edge to get ahead of the person next to them. So hiring the multiple private trainers and whatnot, it is a real hotbed for recruiting. Um, when I was coaching in the college game, that was something that I would aim to go down there. And I didn't always look for the best players on the best teams. I would actually look for some of the middle of the road to lower end players on their college teams and recruit those ones. And for me, it was those ones that had the drive. They were still chomping at the bit to get out there and to play, and weren't as entitled. So but yeah, I think Southern California is crazy competitive, and it's definitely a place where college coaches really look after for recruits. You look at players like Katarina Macario; she
Mhm.
moved down there to train and to get picked up, and it worked for her. She originally was from Brazil, but then moved down there, and then you look at Mac Whitman, the youngest player to sign. She was from the Sacramento area, I believe, and moved down there to get exposure and be recruited. And so many of these players are moving. Like parents are actually splitting families up and moving them down there so they can pursue opportunities. So it's gotten, in my opinion, it's a bit out of hand.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
put that.
you got to swing big. I think. See, I think that's hard because I remember Sydney LaRue. She's been a player that we've liked for a long time as a family, and we got to meet her in Phoenix a long, long time ago. She had a little at a pub, which is funny. But my kids wanted to go there, and my kids got to take a picture with her and everything. And I remember her story that she moved from Canada to Phoenix to play for one of the clubs there. But she was like super young. She was like in her early to mid teens. I moved to a different country. I don't know if her mom was with her. I believe that she was by herself, and they had uh, I don't know what you would call it when a family would kind of like take her on as a guest kind of thing. But yeah, it's almost like you have to do that, but it's getting to the point where like people think it's the standard thing. I don't think it's the standard thing. I think it's something you do when you really have like an elite player that really has a shot at it, and that's a sacrifice that you make. That it's one of those things because I always talk, there's I talked to a gentleman who's dating a pro player too, and he was telling me her story, uh, from conversations with her, and she had a similar experience where she had to go away at a young age, and I think it's kind of almost you end up doing that, but I think people are trying to do that now at such a young level. Like if you're a U12, why are you doing that?
Well,
And
yeah, and you're going to change so much as a player. Your body's going to change and everything over the next few years. And what if you have an injury and you can't play anymore? So now what? You sacrificed all this. You've missed out on those childhood memories of, just everyday life. But to some people, it's worth it because they were, hardcore going after a dream. One thing that we're starting to see now is these younger players that are playing at the professional level. I don't want to name names, but they're
Mhm.
really struggling socially because they haven't been around peers their own age and gone through those um, social milestones. So it's really sad to see. Um, a lot of the college players are noticing it though, like when they interact with the younger players and stuff too, that have gone pro, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I did this path. I pursued college because I really feel like you're falling behind in other areas of your life."
Yeah, it's such a huge sacrifice because that's what you're sacrificing. Um, is it's so hard because like the question I would ask myself, like I'm not in this situation, because my kids are not pros and that's not the path that they were headed. But what would I do if I did have a player that, as a person, she was diehard and this is what she wanted to do. She had, the gift where you're like, okay, she's being highly recruited. Um, like, would I do that? Would I take that risk? Because it is a huge risk. They do give up something. They go give up that social kind of experience, the family experience. It's such a big sacrifice. I think that's why I respect professional athletes so much. I don't, I'm not the kind of person that like talks about a player that made it to a very high level. It's like, oh, that dude sucks. Like, oh, he's trash. Like, I never talk about athletes like that because I know that their journey was full of so much sacrifice just to get there.
Hmm.
And we may look at them like, compared to their peers, maybe they're not as good as their peer, but they're still better than like 99% of the people out there. So we almost forget and take them for granted. Um, but yeah,
Hmm.
I think what you're talking about is so interesting to hear because, you know, I wouldn't trade my experience, my relationship with my kids um, for the dream. Like I wouldn't trade all of the memories and having her come home and being close to her to go watch her at the Olympics or at the World Cup. But maybe that's my opinion. I know some parents maybe feel differently, but I think that's what's hard right now is that there's a lot of people living that they're having the dream for their kids, and it should be their dream, not ours.
1,000%. Yeah, and I think a lot of parents are doing it because it's their dream. And when if your child is that determined and dedicated, there's so many resources with, social media and things like that where you can, YouTube agility drills and things like that. You can guest play with, these great teams if they ever need a player. So you can establish those relationships. If you're that good, I truly don't believe you need to move. I don't think so. And if you have that drive, utilize the resources around you to keep pushing yourself in the game. I mean, you look at, players from all over the world that didn't have access to great resources, but have overcome their situations to be some of the best in the world. So it's
Yeah.
it's not always you got to move and do this. It's are you willing to dedicate your life, your lifestyle to be the best or to be the best that you could be. If you're that great, they're gonna find you.
I agree with you on that. Yeah, I agree. You just hit the nail on the head. That's actually something I say to people is like, look, the reality is that if you are so good that you're headed down that path, they're gonna see you. You're gonna be out there playing. At like here in Southern California, you'll go to San Diego and you'll be playing at a tournament there, and they're gonna know who you are. And coaches talk, so and so like, man, dude, you got to check out this kid. We played this smaller club team, and I don't know who this kid is, but you need to check him out. The word travels fast. It's a small community. If you really are that good, they're gonna find you, in my opinion. But I also don't blame people for trying to do the best for their children because that's how us parents, that's how we look at that. Moving. That's how we look at that. Pushing that is we look at it like us being supportive. And a part of me understands why you would move. A part of me understands that because I am like a diehard supporter of my kids and whatever they want to do. The question would be kind of like at a certain point, kind of like you have to find a balance as a parent and also protect them from themselves because they might be diehards and want to do it, but you're like, hey, I got to protect you from yourself. We got to keep you here. We got to, like you said, use our best resources here locally, play for the better teams, guest play, train with the better trainers in our local area, build relationships, reach out to coaches where you want to go, you know, figure out the game plan. Like there's ways around it without making that sacrifice. But I also don't fault people for doing it. Me personally, but I understand what you're saying though. Like it's just the if you look at it from like a statistical standpoint, right? It's such a high failure rate. And what I mean by failure rate is not a failure if you make it to a college level. I'm talking about a high failure rate to go straight to the pros. You know, not many people go from youth to pros. It's a very small percentage. So if it's a small percentage, that means that there's a high failure rate. So I wouldn't risk my child's youth for that. But that's me. you know.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm personally not a fan of players going directly to the pros because, mm, like I said, what happens if, let's say, your contract, is up, or you don't get re-signed? What if you blow out your knee or have, just some sort of major injury? Then you don't have that college degree to fall back on. So I think that playing college has a huge benefit to developing as a player, but also giving you that 4 year degree that, okay, when I am done playing, because your playing career is only expected for so many years because of wear and tear on your body and just the expectancy of that. Um, so if I would highly recommend always having that other plan to have something that you would do if you weren't playing, and you can back that up by having that 4 year degree.
Got it. Cool. Let me see. I had another question over here. I got distracted over here because I get messages on my phone. I'm like, what's going on here? And then I don't know if I probably don't know this, but I have a really bad attention span. I have like the attention span of like a 5 year old. So I'm really bad. I'm like, sometimes people misinterpret that and think I'm like disrespectful. I'm like, no, I just have a really bad, attention span. All
Well, I'm
right.
a cow, so you're okay.
You won't judge me. All
You're good.
right. So let's see on here the next question. Okay, as far as like on the youth side, touching on when you've coached youth in the past, as far as team managers, what do you think is what makes a good team manager and what makes a bad team manager, quote unquote?
A good team manager is somebody that is going to be so supportive of all the kids, not just their own kid. Um, Also has a relationship with the coach that will take stuff off of their plate, but not doing it clearly for the benefit of their child's playing time. So, because I think a lot of people step in and they're like, well, I'm not doing this or that because my
Yeah.
kid's getting playing time. And so I found that some of the best team managers, they did a lot of really cool stuff. Like when we went to away tournaments, they were making door hangers or really cool baskets for all the kids, setting up team activities and whatnot. When they get a little bit older, I would say somebody who's going to support all the kids in the aspect of when you go to college showcases, they're going to talk highly of all the kids to the college coaches when they hand out the player profiles. It'll be like a team roster and kind of have everybody's general info, those sheets. So you want somebody. I remember there was I was at a tournament one time and the manager went and just handed out his own kid's player profile. And it was like, well, what about the rest of the team? And so for us, that was a huge red flag. He's like, I'm the team manager. This is my daughter. And I'm like, okay, that's not a good sign. And a team manager that's going to just be really positive, and encourage, like point out maybe the parents too, and say, hey, these are the ones that you want to talk to. This is her daughter. Do you have any questions about any of the players? That's just genuinely for the players, and takes a lot of stuff off the coaches, so the coaches can just focus on game day stuff and getting them ready for that. Um, so helping with equipment and all that kind of stuff, rallying other parents. A lot of hands make light work, right? So
Mhm.
because a lot of times these coaches, they have multiple teams, so you want to make sure that the coach is happy to come over, and work with the kids because they don't have a ton of other things that they got to worry about outside of X's and O's and game day stuff.
Got it. That I think that's so hard to find though. So
So
yeah, I think that's so hard to find. I think the part that you mentioned that I think it's good. Look at my computer saying, "Oh man, what are you guys doing?" There you go. All right, cool. But yeah, the thing that's hard is finding someone that has all those characteristics and wants to do it for the right reasons. That's I think that's hard. That's super hard. I don't know how. That's why I think if you have a team parent like that or a team manager like that, you should really just give them all the love in the world, man, because they deserve a lot. But yeah, you know, it's interesting if you can elaborate a little bit on like red flags that you see with parents when you were in the capacity that you were recruiting from a college level. Like, what were things that were automatic? What were actually not necessarily red flags, but what were deal breakers for you?
I can give you a perfect example of one right now, where a player was transferring and talking to a coach, a potential college coach, about all the things that were going wrong at the previous college. And the coach didn't do this, the coach didn't do that, blah, blah, blah. So being very negative and saying all the bad things that were going on, as opposed to, hey, I'd like to go to your school because you have my major. I really like your coaching style. So any like that negativity, whether it's from the player's parents, um, or the player themselves, I think is a huge red flag. Um, we definitely look at GPAs. That's really key because it shows that you can prioritize. College season's super intense, and so if you are struggling in the classroom, it makes me wonder if you're going to struggle to manage an even heavier load with college courses and with trainings 5 days a week and traveling.
Hmm.
Um, but I think, seeing like I mentioned earlier, when if your team is losing, that's one of the best games. Would love to go to. I think there's even a story about a college basketball coach, number one in the country, where they were out recruiting and they went to a game where this high school player was. Um, they knew that they were going to lose, but it was like the number one recruit in the country, and their parents had gone out there and were trying to support her. And as she's walking in the locker room, she totally just ignored them and was really rude to them. And they're like, nope, I don't want that kid. I don't care if they're the number one recruit in the country. So attitude is huge on the field, off the field. Um, I would say, what is your demeanor when the coach is talking to you? Or like, let's say it's halftime. Are you fiddling with graphs? Are you looking around? Are you talking to your parents when you should be sitting there giving your coach eye contact and totally paying attention, maybe actively engaging in the conversation? All that stuff is huge because that's what you're going to be bringing to the program. So we want people that are going to be assets, not liability.
Damn. Has a parent ever been the reason you didn't recruit a player?
100%, more times often than not. So yeah, because you're not just recruiting the player, you're getting that parent for 4 years, and that can make your life miserable. So yeah, and we would go and talk to the coaches too. Hey, what's this? What's their family like? Is the and if they tell us that the parent was a nightmare, absolutely not. We wouldn't take them. I don't care how good you are, but it's just not worth it because it's a total package. And then also social media is huge. What they think, oh, well, I have a soccer account, so I'm only going to put my soccer stuff on there. Well, a lot of times these kids have a personal account as well. And if you're doing crazy, things on that other one,
Yep.
then that's a red flag too. So, but these kids think that the college coaches are only going to look at their soccer account. No, 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 no. We dive in deep.
You know, it's funny you say that. I mean, I've never been a coach, but I remember I was in the military and I was a recruiter for the military. And this was back when MySpace was around. And I used to do it as a military recruiter to know what I was dealing with. So I know things have only gotten worse since the early 2000s when MySpace was around. I just aged myself, but I can see a coach using that as a way to really get to understand and know the person because they put everything out there, not realizing that it's out there. You know, they think, oh, you're only going to see my soccer account. Nope, they'll see everything.
Mm. Everything, and anything that you post online is a representation of me, the program, the university. So it's so important that you really think about what you're putting out there.
True. All right. So the last question I have for you on here is: do you think most private trainers are worth it, or are you better off going on YouTube and just doing your thing?
I don't think regular private training is. I mean, it depends on who it is because there's a couple that I think are absolutely phenomenal. And if you're doing it multiple days a week with that person and at that same intensity, that maybe they're the one. um, serving balls in for you to finish or things like that that you wouldn't be able to do on your own. I
Mhm.
think that those can be really good. But for just like the technical stuff, I think is really there's so much stuff online that you could easily find. And so I personally I don't think it's worth it unless you're actually going to implement a lot of this stuff on your own. Then then that makes a difference, you know. But a lot of times the kids don't. They just do their private lesson and then relax the rest of the week or do their club stuff, but they're not practicing what they're actually learning there.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I wanted to ask that of you because I have mixed feelings about it from like a parent standpoint. You know, on one end, you know, like I was very limited with my kids on my knowledge and my ability to help them. So I remember taking my specifically my younger daughter to an academy here locally, and she really blossomed from going there. Um, you know, I never really can pinpoint it whether it's the instruction or whether it's the small group environment or whether it's the like the thought or like the commitment to I'm doing this separate from my team. Like I never can pinpoint what really caused her to really thrive. When I saw her jump from, you know, 1 year, she went like 2 years straight, and then she just was a whole different player.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to credit that academy. Shout out to Mamba Academy out here. Those are my people over here. But you know, I kind of have a hard time because I have that experience with them, but then I do hear, you know, people talking about other trainers. You know, I don't know who these people are that they're talking about, but what they're mentioning about other trainers is so different than what I experienced. You know, I had a positive experience. I saw my child grow, but I also hear from people, they're like, dude, you know, this person that I'm taking them to, they're charging me. And I'm like, they're not doing anything that I can't go out there and do. Like I played soccer too. Like I know what they're doing, you know. And I'm just sitting there like, wait, so they're making all this money off of charging people and they're not doing anything really more than just an additional practice. So that's why I was asking that question. So it's just kind of curious.
Yeah, and there's a lot of lazy trainers out there too. I mean, I hear a lot of them go, it's the easiest, you know, $100. But I mean, they're charging $100, $150 an hour. It's wild to me, and you know, it's definitely easy money. But then a lot of times parents are looking at the trainers too, like, well, now my kid's going to be great, right? They're going to, you know, do this because I paid that money. So they're looking, it's transactional in a sense, but, um, and I do think it can be great. I think if they do, like you said with the academy, maybe a change of environment, I think is really, really important sometimes, especially if they're with other people that they really enjoy playing with. And I wonder if, you know, that Mamba Academy, maybe it was, maybe they were a little more laid back where it was like more creative and had fun or a lighter environment. I don't know. Totally speculating on that, but
No, you hit the nail on the head. They actually are. They're the guy that runs it, Steven. He's very positive, and they do kind of focus on like creativity, and you know they want you to try things, and just I think it was the environment along with the instruction. I just think it was a good mix for her. But you see, it's a local thing here, and I see a lot of kids that do well. I always recommend them, but I think that environment has a lot to do with it. I think there's a good thing with like the intensity because I know there's some coaches that are or trainers that are very intense, which is also good too in a different way. But I think it just depends on what your kid needs. That you got to know what your kid needs, um, you know, and not burn them out. Because I think you would think that adding, she was doing it twice, and it wasn't even me. It was just once a week that you know they do it, but she wanted to do it twice a week. Like it was coming from her. So that's why I was like, oh, she must really like it if she's over here asking me to do it twice a week on top of her training. I was like, oh my God, that might be a little too much, but we did it.
but that's great if she's asking for it and you know and it's you're not pushing it, then that's perfect. I mean, I personally made the mistake with my own kids about, oh, okay, you have this opportunity to play, you're up, they want you to come in and do another practice. And he's like, oh, I'm tired. I'm like, well, you don't know if you're going to have this opportunity again. You got to take it, you know, and you'll be glad you did once you did it. And it's like, nope, nope, nope. And then finally, you know, the kids get burnt out. And so it's a hard thing when you say, okay, I have all these resources and I can do all this stuff for my kids, but at the end of the day, every kid is so different, and your child isn't you. It's they've got different motivation, different wants, needs. So it's just so important to really hone in on what they want and what their end game is, and just support them regardless of whatever that might be. But it sounds like you did a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Oh man. All right, coach. But that's pretty much all the questions I have, unless you want to say something else, or that's that pretty much it.
No, I think I would just say, I don't want to be negative, but just for parents to really just keep it in perspective that the kids are going to be young once, and if we put too much pressure, then they'll end up resenting you and resenting the game. And so, I read in a book, somebody said, there was an Olympian, and they said, the only thing I ever say to my kid when they get in the car is, I enjoyed watching you play. And that's the best thing that you can say is just show your kids love, and that it's a such a special thing to be able to see your kid go out there and to compete and do something that they love. And you never know when they're going to decide to hang up the cleats. And when that time comes, I think a lot of times it's harder on the parents. And so just remember that every day is a gift that your child is going to play. And if they want to play high school or college, great. If not, that's okay too. It's their path, their journey, and our job is to here to support and love them.
That's excellent. I'm with you 100%, coach. All right. Well, thank you for coming on. And I hope that in the future we can bring you back on, Coach Cal. We should just call you Coach Cal.
Ow.
All right. Well, thank you so much. All right, guys. So we're going to go and wrap it up and post this up and hope to have Coach Cal in the future. Take care.
Boo.